Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Calvin University Alumni Facebook Live event. We're glad to have you here. My name is Rick Chur, and I serve Calvin as Director of Alumni and Community Relations. And we're so glad to have you here for another Facebook Live event. We started doing these shortly after we went to work from home back in March, and then started them back up again just after Labor Day, where we're starting to focus on telling alumni stories. So if there's a great alum out there that you know of, that you think we should be featuring on Facebook Live, please let us know. Also, if you hear from people that wanted to see this but aren't catching it live, we are keeping them in a playlist on YouTube, on Calvin University's YouTube page, as well as they will remain on the Facebook page as well. So we're glad to have a good group with us already starting to watch, and we're excited to tell you about some other upcoming events that are happening with Calvin, because we are moving into homecoming and family weekend, but unfortunately we will not be able to be in person this year due to COVID. So we will be providing a lot of virtual events, and we would love to have you participate in some of them. Check out our homecoming and family weekend website. We'll put that down below in the comments so you can go and visit that. We'll be posting a full lineup of all our events they're on the website right now for the schedule. They include our virtual 5K. We have a lot of runners from all over the world participating in that. We've got some great prizes, including $200 Apple gift card. So sign up for the race, post a photo with the hashtag, and send it to us so you can be entered into the drawing for some of the great prizes that we have for the virtual 5K. And we're so we're thankful to Bill Elfinar, who from Aspen Gold Investments, who's helped to sponsor our Apple Card giveaway. So thank you, Bill, for that. We appreciate it. We're also going to have activities for kids. There's going to be different activities that are posted every day of the week, so you can check those out on our page. And we'll be hosting a Maroon and Gold Day, where we're encouraging everyone to get their Calvin gear on and send us photos for that as well. And then we encourage you to check out our trivia nights too. We'll have some that will be that families can participate in. So there'll be some questions for kids that they should know the answers to as well. And then we'll also be having other trivia nights for alumni around the world to participate in. So lots of great activities. Check out the Homecoming Family Weekend webpage and the schedule, and make sure that you engage with us there. We'd love to have you. And hopefully next year we'll be back in person. And if you're thinking back about all your Calvin days, I know for me, a lot of memories that come back are my days in the dorm. I was on third floor board and had a great time there. And we are going to be partnering with the annual giving team and the annual fund, and they're going to be hosting a dorm challenge during Homecoming Family Weekend. So if you have just to make a $10 or more gift to the annual fund in honor of your dorm, you'll get Calvin stickers as a thank you. And then the students who are currently living in the dorm, that will go towards their total. And the dorm that raises the most money, those students living in the dorm that raises the most money will all get Calvin gloves. So they have a fun pair of Calvin mittens that we're going to be giving away. So it's a great chance for you to get involved and show students that you support them, and also help support the annual fund at the same time. So again, those links will all be in the comments below, so make sure you check those. But for now, I'm very excited to introduce today's guest. Pam Marmon is a 2005 Calvin alum. She's also someone who has served the university on the alumni board, and so we're thankful for her service there. But she's currently the CEO of Marmon Consulting, a change management consulting firm that provides strategy and execution services to help companies transform. Pam has also founded Threefold Tribe, a consulting firm that helps growing churches to multiply. And among her other accomplishments is the 2020 publication of her book, No One's Listening and It's Your Fault. Pam, welcome, and I love the title of that book.
Thank you, Rick, for having me.
You're welcome. It's so great to have you here. I'm excited to start asking you some questions, but I also want to open it up to those who are watching right now. And if you've got questions, feel free to put them in the comments, and we will try to get to some of those if we have time later in the interview. But to start with, why don't you just tell everyone a little bit about your journey as a consultant, or maybe what your typical workday looks like, or maybe things aren't even typical right now as they are for most people.
Exactly. Yeah, so I graduated in 2005, like you mentioned, and my first job was actually in corporate America. I was working with Meyer at their corporate office in Grand Rapids. And shortly after that, I moved to Seattle and I started working for the Boeing company. One thing after another led, I ended up in the consulting space, and Seattle was a booming place to do a lot of consulting work. So I started out doing consulting work around process improvement and project management. And it wasn't until I was working with a Fortune 50 technology client that was doing a merger. And I was working with their team, bringing these two companies that were actually global together. And I realized that there was this space called change management. One of the other consultants was doing the work, and he said, help me out. And so I did. I know, Rick, you and I talked a little bit earlier about the fact that there is such a thing as change management consulting. It's a real profession. And so at that point, I got certified to lead organizations through change, and I've been doing that for the last 10 years. But in terms of my work, I typically work with executives and leaders of organizations to help them transform their workplace. A lot of times it's centered around technology, digital transformations, but a lot of times it's not. Maybe it's process improvement or merger and acquisition. It can be a variety of different things. And I help those leaders to identify the vision of where they want to get to, and then how do we get their organization, the people within their company, to that point. And that's a little bit about what I do.
Yeah, that's great. It's a lot. I think I was mentioning to you earlier that when I see some of your social media posts, it seems like you are completely busy. And just even talking to you before the call, I've just realized that you've just lived all over the US in the past 10 years. It's amazing. So
yes, I love change, and so I thrive in the environment.
And apparently you like helping people navigate it. So
I sure do.
That's great. So let's talk a little bit about the book. What prompted you to write it, and what are some of the key concepts that you think alumni should know?
Yeah, so the book is primarily designed to answer one question. And the question is, how can I navigate change successfully? Because everybody, whether you're an executive leader in an organization or you lead a team, or you're an individual who's trying to overcome some change in your life, we all face potential anxiety around change. And so what I realized after working with leaders for a decade, that people fear change and leaders fear change to some degree. And they were afraid of how they would roll it out to their people, and if people would reject it or accept it, and the speed and the pace at which that change would move. And so I wanted to write a book to help leaders and help individuals understand, how can I be successful in navigating change in my organization? What are the things that I need to do? And how can I really help not just me, myself, and my career, but how can I help people in my organization, even outside of my organization, reap the benefits of the changes that happen? So that's why I wrote the book. In the book, I actually talk about this incredibly important mindset shift. We are taught to believe that change is hard, right? Like, we hear it everywhere, change is hard. And I wanted to address that when we believe that change is hard, we behave like change is hard. And so if we as leaders start to think differently about change is personal, change is emotional, we start to behave differently, and we plant seeds in our organizations that are going to reap the benefit of the positive things of the change, rather than instilling this belief that change is going to be hard and we're going to suffer through it and it's going to be just miserable. And so I help leaders understand how to shift that mindset for themselves. And then I introduce them with a model to help them understand, how do you roll it out with a proper process? So essentially the book talks about the proper process. With the proper process, change is not hard. And I help leaders understand how to do that.
Do you think that's why people so much struggle with change, because they think it's going to be hard? Or what do you think it is that people fear about change?
So it could be a variety of things. For some, it's loss of power. For some, it's loss of control. There could be a financial implication that if we change something, maybe it's going to impact my income or how I provide for my family. It could be that we've always done things a certain way, and so it's this mindset that why change it if it's not broken. A lot of it just depends on the individual, but what's important for us to understand is, why do I resist it? And is there something that's truly rooted that I need to understand to overcome as an individual to help me be more successful in that changing environment? And once we know why we may be resistant to change, then we can start to address it. And especially with leaders in organizations, as soon as a leader finds out what is preventing people from adapting the change, then we can actually put tools in place to help these individuals be just thrive in that changing environment.
Yeah, that's great. Can you talk a little bit about your experience at Calvin and what prepared you for the work that you're doing today?
Yeah, so I love my Calvin experience. I had thriving 4 years at Calvin. 2 of them I was an RA in the apartments for the upper, the seniors and the juniors. And one thing that Calvin taught me to do really well is critical thinking. There's actually 2 things that Calvin taught me really well. One is critical thinking, and the other one is the application of my faith. So in the critical thinking, it's learning how to think rather than just be accepting of data or facts, but understanding how do I interpret the data, how do I make decisions based on that data, and then on the faith application, how can I take my faith and apply it in a very meaningful, tangible way that demonstrates not just my faith, but the goodness of the Lord in my life and the lives of others. And so I've been able to craft a career where I've been able to take my faith and apply it through entrepreneurship, through consulting with churches, but also in the business place where, maybe it's not as obvious when we talk about values and behaviors and things that we implement to make the thriving environment where it's very much based on Christian values. And for that, I'm very grateful for Calvin and the wonderful professors and friends that I've had as a result of attending Calvin.
Yeah, I had noticed after Calvin posted that you would be on this interview today, several Calvin professors chimed in, and we're excited to see that you were going to be talking with us. So it is amazing the relationships that develop between the students and the professors that go on for the rest of our lives. And I think it's a unique hallmark of Calvin's education for sure. So can you talk a little bit about where you draw inspiration from, and are there resources that you'd recommend our alumni sort of check out to sort of be inspired by?
Yeah, I love to read, and so books for me have always been a source of inspiration. I also am very active on LinkedIn, so for those who are on the LinkedIn social network, that to me is a great place to also connect with influencers, observe and learn, and a lot of times for me it's connecting with people in different industries and just different spaces altogether and trying to glean from them and what's worked for them and what hasn't worked for them. Always re-engineering myself and reinventing and upskilling myself in terms of what can I learn, what is new on the market that may be interesting to me to explore. And it doesn't have to be professional. Sometimes it's just for fun, things that we do with our kids or hobbies or things like that. But inspiration to me primarily comes from books, and then a lot of online courses that are available now to us where we watch professionals who are very skilled in their space that inspire me to continue to develop my own skills in my space as a change leader.
Yeah, that's great. So you talked about being able to listen to leaders and trying to figure out how to change effectively, but could you share with us some reasons why you think some people may not be listening to those who are leading them?
Yes. So the book that I wrote is actually to help leaders to understand how to communicate in the midst of a change so that people hear them. And I talk about several different reasons why people are not listening to your message as a leader. And one of them is it's not the right message. So I'm going to give an example of a company I work with in Seattle that was an incredible organization. And they were actually at a point of change saturation, too many changes happening at the same time. And what we ended up doing, every project was sending out messages on a consistent basis. And what we learned was that because there was so much change, people were not listening to any of the messages. And so we ended up having to collaborate and have a cohesive message across the entire organization that people could actually make sense of, a story that they could relate to and understand how it impacts them. So that would be number one. Another one would be it's not the right timing. And timing is really important when it comes to change because there's an organizational timing, but there's also timing of day or timing of the week that we have to be mindful of. And a lot of communications nowadays happen through email, which in my opinion is not, it's maybe actually is the worst way to communicate. The more we can engage with people, the better the communication is. And so the timing of when those messages come is really important. If there is a project or an initiative, something that's happening in the organization that is much more important, much more urgent than what you are doing, the likelihood of that message being heard is much less. And so being able to connect to that overarching vision and the message of the organization is going to be really important. And another one that may feel really personal is that you may not be the right sender. The reason why that's personal is a lot of times people would say, well, that really kind of feels harsh. But the reality is that research that's been done in the change management space by an organization called ProSci has led us to understand that when employees are when an organization is changing its vision, employees are looking to the executive leaders to provide that information. But when an employee's day-to-day job is changing, they're looking for their direct manager to provide that information. So the sender is really important in getting your message heard, because if you're not the right sender, people are probably not going to listen to that message. They're going to look to their peers or their boss or people within the organization that they're connected with for that content to come through.
Yeah,
so those are.
Yeah. So besides the book, I mentioned that you've also done a lot of work with churches, and I wondered if you could talk a little bit about that too, and did that sort of help develop into the book, the work that you were doing with churches, or what was the trajectory there?
Yeah, so I started to do church consulting about 3 years ago. I wrote an article in Christianity Today on leading change in the church, and started out with writing a course on leading change, and that's available for free now on my website on threefoldtribe.com. And eventually that converted into more consulting, because I realized it was when I partnered with churches and pastors that I was able to help them really transform the culture of the church and the direction that they were headed. And so when I started to write the book, initially it was supposed to be actually for the church. And I ended up broadening it up a little bit more so that it's inclusive of the business, because I was playing in both spaces essentially. And what I did with the book, I actually intentionally inserted scripture and stories of the Bible and things that were very much faith-based and intentional in the book, so that whoever is reading the book, whether they're a Christian or they're not a Christian, may be intrigued enough to say, I want to know more. I want to go deeper in my faith. I'm curious about Jesus. And so the book was definitely written from more of a business perspective, but it's inclusive of the church, and all of the things I teach can be applied in the church as well.
Oh, that's great. Well, thanks. You mentioned that people can connect with you on LinkedIn. Are there other ways that people could connect if they want to reach out to you?
Absolutely. So people can actually find more information on leading change. I have free templates and all kinds of tools available on marmonconsulting.com. That's a great place. I would love to teach everything that I know, and I know if there's anything that has resonated with our listeners, I'd love to connect with them on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active there. And if anybody has specific questions around leading change or organization, or even adapting to a changing environment in their personal life, I'm happy to help out.
That's great. Well, Pam, thanks so much for being with us today. It was a pleasure. It's good to see you again and to talk with you. And we hope that everyone will come back in 2 weeks. We'll be having another interview, and it'll be with Jared Brispens, who's a 2009 alum and is currently serving as an active duty physician and flight surgeon for the United States Coast Guard. And he actually had just finished up a job with the CDC and infectious diseases, and was helping Calvin do a lot of their planning for a safe return this fall in the midst of a pandemic. So we're looking forward to talking to Jared next week, or in 2 weeks, after Homecoming and Family Weekend. So we encourage you to, in the meantime, participate in Homecoming and Family Weekend and our virtual activities. Make sure you check those out in the links below. And before we go, I just want to remind you that we're going to have a lot of great events coming up. And even though we can't be together, we still want to be able to remain engaged with you. So thanks a lot for taking the time today, and we'll be back here in 2 weeks.